All right. Well, I just got done watching Joe. Now, what is Joe? Well, unlike unlike a lot of the high profile mainstream theatrical releases this week, Joe is actually an independent movie that was released in in a limited release in theaters, video on demand, and iTunes. It stars Nicolas Cage and is directed by David Gordon Green. Now, first of all, I've been waiting for another really great Nicolas Cage movie, and I can safely say that Joe fulfills that wish. Like I said, it's directed by David Gordon Green. Now, David Gordon Green, you may not know him for films like this because he originally started out making independent, heavy hitting dramas like George Washington. But after a few years, he immediately turned around and made the Pineapple Express. So he's one of these directors. He claims he likes to mix things up, but he's a director who does not have one singular style. Although given what he's been doing recently, at least in terms of directing, I think a lot of people are glad that he's going back to, or at least he seems to be going back to indie dramas because following up Pineapple Express, he made The Sitter, which was terrible. He made Your Highness, which was also very terrible. So I believe he also made something called Prince Avalanche, which I haven't actually seen, but this marks a significant return to form, as a lot of critics are calling it. This is getting pretty good reviews, and there's a reason for that. The movie revolves around this guy named Joe, played by Nicolas Cage, and he's basically this guy who runs this. It's kind of a lumbering scam. He runs this business where he and a bunch of workers get together in these woods, and basically they chop and poison these dead or dying trees so as to make room for newer trees. I mean, it kind of goes into a gray area in terms of what is legal because, like I said, these trees are dead or dying. So I so there's really no one stopping this practice, and there's not really any strict opposition to it. And hey, it pays the bills for several of these guys. When one day, a kid comes looking for work, and this kid is named Gary. He comes from a pretty abusive background. His father is this drunk who like I said, he's very abusive. He beats him on a regular basis, and his main goal is to take care of his mother and his sister. So Cage gives him the job, and before long, they start to develop a respect for each other. They start to bond. Cage becomes sort of like a father figure to this kid, and and before long, some unfortunate circumstances uh, put both of them in danger because they are living in a relatively, I shouldn't even say relatively, they are living in a pretty rural area. So laws, someone isn't necessarily as safe where they are. I think they're somewhere in Texas. Someone isn't necessarily as safe where they are as they would be in somewhere like, I don't know, somewhere where the law is more prominent. And I'm not saying that this is a completely lawless town, because there are scenes where Cage gets arrested, but it's just very difficult to survive in this rough kind of place. It's a little hard to explain, but that's the basic gist. Now, Nicolas Cage, he's kind of like David Gordon Green, whereby he used to be basically critically loved, but in recent years he is kind of not steadily, just rapidly declined in terms of reputation and in terms of the quality of movies that he takes. True, it may have something to do with the fact that he was strapped for cash, but let's just say I have not been a fan of Cage's work recently, because you have things like Bangkok Dangerous, you have things like Kick-Ass, which a lot of people liked. I didn't, although he was fine in there. But you have things like Ghost Rider, you have things like Trespass, Stolen, Ghost Rider 2, Seeking Justice. It was only after I saw Frozen Ground where I actually started to get a glimmer of hope that, maybe he can make a comeback. Maybe he can start being in decent movies again. And Frozen Ground was not perfect, don't get me wrong. Frozen Ground was okay, but it was pretty by the books. I mean, for a true story, there wasn't really... And this is something that was echoed in the minds of a lot of other critics. It didn't really do enough to differentiate itself from all the other police procedurals out there, but considering how good it was in comparison to Cage's other work in recent years, I had a good time with it. Nicolas Cage was very good in the movie. John Cusack was very good. Vanessa Hudgens was very good, which surprised me. So when I went into, I just wanted to preface this review by basically giving my experience with watching Nicolas Cage movies over the past few years, so you can better understand my mindset going into this. Going into watching Joe, I was trepidatious, to be sure, because these are two guys who, like I said, whose careers have basically, like I said, they basically declined in the past few years. So I wasn't really sure if this was going to be a big turnaround. But I think it is safe to say that this movie is very, very good. I would even say at several points it is great. There are only a few minor issues with it that hold it back from I think the same standards as something like Mud with Matthew McConaughey, and I'll come back to that in a second. But Nicolas Cage gives his best performance in years. He is so great in this movie. You really buy that he is this very subdued ex-con, because that's what the character is. The character of Joe is this ex-con who is trying desperately not to get in more trouble, while at the same time having a real sense of aimlessness in his life. It seems like a character that has been done before, but the way that Cage plays it and the way that he puts his kind of unique stamp on it, how he can so quickly go from this subdued loner to being this genuinely dangerous guy is something that Nicolas Cage does pretty well, and it's something unique that he brings to the character. He is so interesting in this movie. He makes this character interesting, and this character would be interesting even if Cage wasn't playing him. But like I said, Cage brings his own unique persona to the role, without necessarily going overboard like he did with Ghost Rider or several other movies that he's done. He's not doing that kind of self-parodying, like, oh, I'm crazy Nicolas Cage. No, he plays it straight. And wow, was that refreshing in this day and age. Cage should do more movies like this. He is so great in this movie. And the kid is played by a young actor named Ty Sheridan, who also played the lead kid in Mud. And Mud is better than this, I think, but Ty Sheridan is just as good here as he was in Mud, if not better. He keeps up with Cage and the numerous other people in this movie. And that's something that you just have to appreciate in a child actor who can easily keep up with these. I don't even want to say actors, because there's not really a whole lot of big name actors in this movie. There's only really a few. And that actually leads me to an interesting point of praise later on. But Ty Sheridan is fantastic in this movie. Same as with Cage. He has a bright future ahead of him if he keeps picking really good movies like this and Mud, and B, keeps giving really, really solid performances. He is not annoying in the slightest. He does not fall into that trap that a lot of child actors do, where they're trying to be precocious or talk like adults, or it's kind of like the Fred Savage effect or the Dakota Fanning effect, where they try to make them mature beyond their years, but they end up being annoying. And I'm not saying that Fred Savage and Dakota Fanning are annoying, and I'm not saying that they're bad actors, but a lot of directors try to imitate or emulate their performances, and that leads to some pretty annoying child actors. But Ty Sheridan does not fall into that trap. He is, like I said, he is great in this movie. Nicolas Cage is great in this movie. And really, those are the main two. And this goes back to what I was saying before, is that there are a lot of non-actors in this movie. And David Gordon Green, he actually made a fairly interesting move here, because he didn't cast actors in a lot of these roles. The workers that are under Nicolas Cage's employ are supposedly real laborers. And Gary's dad, his drunk dad, he was sad to say, he was a homeless guy who David Gordon Green found, and sadly he died shortly after filming this movie. But if you want authenticity, there you go. And this is a very authentic movie. This does not feel at all like a Hollywoodized or spoon-fed version of the Deep South. This does not feel. It's kind of like Mud, where it feels real. It feels like real life. It feels like a very atmospheric, very loving take on this particular setting. And this is a very atmospheric movie. This does acknowledge that this is a very harsh environment. This does acknowledge that these characters are changing. They are adapting to their environment, and not always for the better. If you were to put someone like Joe or someone like Gary into a nice suburban neighborhood, then they would not exactly do well, because they're smoking, they're drinking, they're cussing, they're fighting. So while the characters here are kind of morally ambiguous, you do get the sense that they're forced to adopt these personas. They are forced to to be like this in order to survive in this environment. So, so the fact that the script and the direction was able to capture this very realistic, very authentic feeling so well, thanks in no small part due to the powerful performances from Cage and Sheridan, and also from all the other non-actors in the movie. These do not feel like performances. They don't. And I mean that in the best way. I'm not saying like, oh god, these performances suck, they don't even feel real. No, they feel so real that they do not feel like acting. Because I'm guessing that the people like the laborers and the homeless guy, they didn't really have to venture too far outside their comfort zone. And I'm not trying to take a dump all over their potential for giving a performance. I'm just saying that they were chosen to play these parts because they were comfortable in these types of roles. So to be able to make a fairly bold decision like that, I think is a real credit to David Gordon Green as someone who is pretty daring. And I've always considered him daring ever since he switched over to making stoner comedies from the very heavy dramas that he was previously known for. And I think it's a very interesting move to go back to dramas, at least in this case. So, if there are a few things I had a problem with, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more depth displayed in characters like the drunken father and the guy who gets in bar fights with Cage. I would have liked to have seen a bit more depth behind them. I understand that the point was to imitate real life, where you don't always know why people act the way they do. And in that sense, it works, but from a storytelling perspective, I don't know, it just leaves you wanting for more. You're not really sure. Actually, no, you are sure that you are not supposed to care about these characters, and whenever the film focuses on these characters, you aren't really as invested as you would be if it were focusing on someone like Joe or Gary. Another thing I had a problem with is the overall structure of the film. It doesn't really flow as coherently or as smoothly as I think the filmmakers wanted it to. The scenes, and this is kind of the problem with telling a dual story like this, because this is just as much about Joe as it is about Gary. Actually, Joe probably gets like 60% of the screen time. Gary probably gets about 40. But you get my drift. This is fairly divided as a story, and as to the characters that it wants to focus on. As a result, it will routinely cut between something significant that's going on in Joe's life to something that's going on in Gary's life, and at times, especially when it's something very, very dramatic, like Gary's father hitting him, it can be pretty jarring when they cut from that to, say, Joe at a bar, or Joe sleeping, or Joe handling his dog. It can be pretty jarring, and the film does not really do anything to segue into these scene changes. There's not really much in the way of transitioning here. But if you can get past that, if you can get past the jarring feeling that the film unfortunately gives off when it changes scenes and when it's trying to tell these two stories, it does make for a very compelling drama. The drama here feels real. I keep comparing it to Mud, but the drama here feels real. A lot of things in this movie feel real. The characters feel real. They are interesting. The setting feels completely authentic, and and appropriately harsh. There's not really a point in this movie where it flat out tells you, okay, this is our goal for the movie. It's just showing these people who, like I said, feel real. It's just showing them trying to live their lives and coming into conflict with those who have it out for them. So on that level, this film succeeds very much. It's just when it fails to adhere to some of the things that you would expect in a film, especially one as interesting as this, such as making the scenes cohere with each other a bit more. But like I said, aside from that, the film is fantastic. The performances are electrifying. The authenticity is impeccable, and there is not one instance where you feel that a moment was contrived. Every moment here feels real. It feels genuine, and that's really the biggest compliment I can give this movie, is that it is a drama that feels appropriately dramatic, because I keep using this word, it feels real. So yeah, that's about all I got, and until next week with whatever movie is coming out. I don't plan on making this a weekly thing, but I'll just say thank you Hollywood for finally giving us another really great Nicolas Cage movie. Thank you.